Hello everyone and welcome to today's Vision Zero for Youth webinar. Today we're kicking off our three-part series and thinking about how Walk to School Day and Vision Zero for Youth can join together to lead an entire community towards creating safer places for walking, biking, and driving. Our panelists will be sharing information about Walk to School Day events and Vision Zero for Youth approaches that serve as a catalyst to advance road safety for everyone. I'm Kristen Blank and I'll be facilitating today's webinar. I'd like to introduce the panelists joining us today. Nancy Pullen-Sufert is the Director of the National Center for Safe Routes to School and the Associate Director of the Pedestrian and Bicycle Information Center. She's been involved in coordination of National Walk to School Day since 2003 and helped start National Bike to School Day in 2012 and has since been involved in its coordination as well. With a background in public health, she's worked in transportation injury prevention for 20 years. She's led projects for the U.S. Department of Transportation, philanthropies, and state agencies, much of it focused on supporting safe walking and biking to school through the evaluation, strategic initiative development, resource development, and working directly with communities and states. We would also like to welcome Leah Sham to the webinar. Leah is the founder and director of the Vision Zero Network, a national campaign supporting cities working toward Vision Zero, zero traffic fatalities and severe injuries. The network helps communities develop and share best practices for safe mobility for all road users. As a German Marshall Fund Fellow, Leah researched Vision Zero strategies in Sweden, Germany, and the Netherlands. Prior to that, she was the executive director of the 10,000-member San Francisco Bicycle Coalition, which promotes bicycling for everyday transportation. Leah formerly served on the board of directors of the Golden Gate Bridge, Highway and Transportation District, and the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency. Thank you to our panelists for joining us today. Before turning the presentation over to our panelists, I'd like to take a few minutes to cover a few housekeeping items. Attendees, if you can hear me, please click the hand icon located in the upper right corner of your screen. This lets us know the webinar is working and you can hear us. If for some reason your computer freezes, please reload the website and log back into the program. You will be able to rejoin the session. Please note that attendees will not be able to speak during the webinar, though you will have the ability to submit questions and comments using the chat function. Please feel free to ask questions at any time. We will hold about 15 to 20 minutes for a discussion session after our presentation. We will be posting presentation slides and a recording of the webinar on the Walk and Bike to School Day website, so you will be able to look back at anything you missed. The presentation slides and video will be available in a couple of days. Tomorrow, you will receive a follow-up email from the UNC Highway Safety Research Center with a link that will allow you to generate a certificate of attendance for this webinar. If you are attending the webinar with multiple attendees at your site, please make sure to forward this message to each of them. I also want to let you know about the next two webinars in the Vision Zero for Youth series. Please visit the Walk and Bike to School Day website to learn more about these upcoming opportunities and register. And before I turn the webinar over to our panelists, we have a poll question for you. Let me go ahead and share this with you. And you'll see that we're asking, are you participating in Walk to School Day in October? And your options are yes, and we've registered at walkbiketoschool.org, yes, but I'm not sure if we've registered, and no. So let me give you a couple of more seconds to respond. All right, looks like responses are coming in now. Let me share the results with you. So it looks like we have 34% who are participating and they have registered online. We have 43% who are interested in planning to participate, but they're not sure if they've registered. And we have 23% who are not planning to participate. So thank you all for your responses. So with that, I want to kick off our webinar today and turn the session over to our first panelist, Nancy. So Nancy, let me go ahead and share the screen with you to start your presentation.
Kristen, would you send me that one more time?
Sure, let me take it back.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon.
Let's try it again.
Perfect. Okay. So thank you so much for joining our webinar today. And thanks to Kristen for doing introductions. And thank you so much to Leah Shayam for being on our webinar today as well. So interesting poll results. This is great. We have a diverse grouping of folks on the call today in regards to Walk to School Day and sort of what level of involvement you have in it. And that is perfect. So some of the time we're going to spend today hoping to entice you to be part of a Walk to School Day event and giving you some ideas about how you might tie that together with larger road safety initiatives, particularly Vision Zero. So there is something in today for everyone on the call. As you may know, Walk to School Day in the U.S. began back in 1997, and we've learned a lot about why communities choose to participate. So physical activity, building a sense of community, supporting safe routes to school programs, and having fun all play a role. But safety is at the core of every event. The importance of safety on the day of the event and supporting and encouraging safe walking and biking to school on a daily basis. So for some communities, there are great conditions for walking and they're trying to get more families to walk and bike, and other places use Walk to School Day to kind of shine a light on needed improvement. And as you can see, we have found that more than half of event holding communities do work to promote safe walking and biking throughout the year, oftentimes because they are part of Safe Routes to School programs. Regardless of where your community falls along the spectrum, we all share an interest in keeping kids safe as they're walking and biking or riding in a school bus or a vehicle. And there are more and more communities joining the movement to be part of Walk to School Day. So as you can see, we have seen record-breaking participation in Walk to School Day year over year, thanks to many of you on the phone. So right now we have an opportunity that I want to strongly encourage you to jump on. And what is that opportunity? So across the country, there is a growing surge of interest among states, cities, and communities to focus on safety on our roads and to commit to eliminating all traffic deaths and serious injuries. And this is often called Vision Zero or Towards Zero Deaths or Target Zero, or it may go by some other name where you live, or there may be no current conversations where you live. We know that most Walk to School Day organizers have never heard of Vision Zero. In fact, more than 70% have not. So we wanted to use this as an opportunity for many of you to consider how you might link your event to Vision Zero and to broader safety initiatives. So I'm very pleased to be joined today by Leah Shayam, Director of the Vision Zero Network, as Kristen mentioned, and she truly is seen as a leader in supporting communities and states in their goals to reach zero traffic deaths and injuries. And so she's going to explain more about what Vision Zero is and give you some ideas on steps you can take. And then I'm going to jump back on and tell you about Vision Zero for Youth, which very much fits within Vision Zero, encouraging cities to prioritize safety in places where kids walk and bike. So Leah and I's job really is to be sure that you leave with some inspired and that you have some concrete ideas about sort of how you can take more steps to link together Walk to School Day, it's Safe Routes to School, Vision Zero. So I hope that you will agree and feel inspired to know that you really do have a powerful voice for change in your community around road safety. So on that note, I'm going to switch it over to Leah.
Great. Thank you, Nancy. And I will get set up here. Great. Can folks see my slides okay?
Yes.
Yep, they look great.
Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Leah Sham, and I'm with the Vision Zero Network. We're a nonprofit. Thank you so much, Nancy and Kristen, for the warm welcome and for the important work you're doing in the Vision Zero for Youth space and beyond. And thanks to everybody for making time on the call. And whether you're already organizing for Walk to School Day or just considering it, thank you for your work in your community. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what Vision Zero is, what we really see as the power and potential of Vision Zero, why this is such a strong movement and growing so fast, like Nancy said, and also hopefully share some ideas of how we see such synergy between the important work so many of you are doing on the ground via Safe Routes programs and Walk to School programs, et cetera, and the Vision Zero world. So I'll just start by saying a little bit about what the goal of Vision Zero is. Hopefully you probably get the idea. It is the goal of zero traffic deaths or severe injuries among all road users. So that's whether you're walking, bicycling, driving, on transit, and it's all people, all ages. So, this is certainly, a very much a big tent approach, and it's really, I think, garnering people's interest because it is obviously a very bold and ambitious, and we would say very appropriate goal of safe mobility for everyone. So I want to share a little bit about why we think there's such synergy here with the Safe Routes programs. And obviously, the work you're doing is exactly, and the work we're doing is exactly in line with each other of healthy, active mobility. And how are we promoting walking, biking, and healthy mobility? As Nancy said, to be able to do that, we need safe conditions. People need to feel safe on their streets. So part of what we're really doing in the Vision Zero movement is by no means are we introducing a new toolbox, right? We think the tools are out there and they're getting better every day, but so much of what you're already doing on the ground in your Safe Routes programs fit very well into this Vision Zero goal. What we're really trying to do is help grow the political buy-in, and I would say the public buy-in to this goal of safe mobility for everyone. And I'll talk a little bit about how we're doing that. But I just want to give some credit, first of all. This really is, this Vision Zero movement, much like Safe Routes and the work on the ground it's very much community-led. And I just want to give credit. This is an image showing here, New York City was the first US community to commit to Vision Zero. And very much coming from parents, from members of business districts, from neighborhood associations, people who were frustrated, frankly, with the unsafe conditions on their streets and the feelings of feeling threatened on their streets. And they really organized and pushed the city to commit to Vision Zero, setting that ambitious and, again, appropriate goal. And now I'm going to show you a map here. You'll see hopefully these little green dots. There are more than 40 communities. So since New York City became the first US city to commit to Vision Zero, that was about 5 years ago, more than 40 additional communities across the country, you can see here, big and small, have committed to Vision Zero. And we're really happy to say, what this means, this is more than just words. I really want to emphasize that, what we're working on in Vision Zero and what we'd love to help you all incorporate into your work if you're interested is far more than a slogan. It's far more than just a, kind of fancy name of, oh, Vision Zero. It's, got kind of a sexy name, but really what we're doing here is getting high-level commitments in each of the cities you see on the map from the mayors, from the police chiefs, from the transportation directors, from the public health directors, really diverse and important local leaders, those key stakeholders, setting an explicit goal of zero traffic deaths and severe injuries among all road users within a set time frame. And that's really important because everybody agrees, sure, we want safer, right? Everyone wants everyone to be safer, sure. But until we start to have that really clear measurability and transparency and clear timelines set, we find that unfortunately things can get watered down. So we really want to be able to hold folks accountable for the work we're all doing here. So I just want to give credit. This work was started about 20 years ago. Vision Zero, I should say, was started 20 years ago in Sweden. And obviously that's a very different country than the US, much smaller and very different, but they were actually trending poorly around traffic safety, like we are, unfortunately, in the US, way too many traffic deaths. And in the last 20 years since they've committed to Vision Zero, Sweden's traffic deaths have been cut in half. So half as many deaths, yet they're still having more trips. Their population's growing and their trips are growing, which is great to see. So this is not about limiting mobility, but ensuring safe mobility for everyone. Great. Now I'm going to get into a little bit of what makes Vision Zero different. And we'll try and highlight some examples throughout here of what might be opportunities for schools and neighborhoods to really get involved. But this little graph or this little chart shows the real basics. You'll see on the left kind of the traditional approach. This is the way we in the US and I'd say most countries have approached traffic safety. And then on the right, you'll see Vision Zero. I'm going to highlight a few of these. Number one, you'll see on the right, traffic deaths are preventable. So setting that goal in the name of Vision Zero, it really, I think it resets our expectations. You know, why are we, even implicitly, why are we thinking that traffic deaths are inevitable? And again, people don't say that explicitly, but there's kind of this feeling of, oh, well, you know, as modernization happens, as communities get busier and more crowded, you're going to have a certain number of deaths. Well, that's not what we think about most preventable causes of death, right? Whether that's, you know, something like gun violence or a disease like polio or various, you know, clear health threats. We as a community, we as a society, our leaders and the media and community members look at that preventable death area or injury area and say, well, we want to stop that. We want everyone to be safe from that danger. Well, that's exactly how we should be moving in the world of traffic safety. So whether you're talking about school area safety or safety in any part of your community, people have the right. They literally have the right to get where they need to go, whether that's school, work, a park, a playground, a job, everywhere. You know, we want people to have that right. So really thinking about how are we turning this issue kind of on its head a bit. And then I'll skip down to the second to last one and just talk about the systems approach. What you'll hear me refer to a lot here is, you know, expanding beyond the individual responsibility. Now, this doesn't mean we want to disregard that. Of course, we want to teach children and people of all age to be safe when they cross the street, when they're riding a bike, when people are driving. Of course, everyone has their clear rights and responsibilities on the road. But we really want to look upstream. We want to think about what are the systems that really influence people's behavior. So that's the built road environment. Those are policies. That's the way, you know, speeds are set perhaps around your school. And we'll talk about different examples there. But I just wanted to highlight those are two of the really big differences that Vision Zero is bringing in. And we'll talk about some examples. So here's one, back to that idea of these losses, these tragedies being preventable. If there's one thing I'd ask folks on the call to do today, and one takeaway, one clear takeaway is think about how you're using language and those around you are using language. And I know I used to call them traffic accidents all the time, and that's still how most people word them, and that's how the media calls them. But when we call something an accident, it really takes away the agency. It makes it seem as if we have no control over that, as if it's just, you know, a completely unalterable event, like a meteor falling out of the sky that no one could have predicted. But in fact, we know a lot about where crashes happen, and we can predict, not 100%, but a large portion, we can predict what kinds of crashes might happen where and when and to whom. And we have agency or power about how to influence those. And I know that's a lot of the work you're doing around Safe Routes to School and Walk to School Day is really helping raise awareness about what we can do, redesigning our streets, changing our speeds and different policies to make sure that these crashes are not severe. So this is just one ask to really think about changing your own language and people in your work, in your community, in your family, from traffic accident to crash, to help share that we do have agency there. And part of that is really thinking about, you know, like I said, what's happening where and to whom and when and how. These are just stats from a few cities I pulled, statistics. I live in San Francisco. I'm sharing a stat from Denver and LA here. Almost every community we work with, big or small across the country, has a very similar dynamic. And what this is showing is that, let's look at Denver, for instance, 50% of the traffic fatalities overall occur on just 5% of the streets. This is very common. What this means is that there's a really big proportion of problems or dangers happening on a relatively or sometimes very small proportion of streets. Now that's unfair in a way, but it also gives us power, right? We know where we can focus energy, where your city or your school districts, your engineers, your planners can focus their energy to have the biggest impact. So I just want to pause here and say, for those of you working at your local school or across the city in the school district, data is power. We know that. You probably work a lot with data already. If not, I'd say this is one of the most important areas to dig in, whether you're calling it Vision Zero or just broadly school area safety or community safety. Your traffic or transportation, I should say, your transportation department or your public works department certainly has data. And what you want to do if you haven't yet is go to them, find a friendly planner or engineer or transportation official, or maybe it's a city council member's office or a school district official who can help do this. But go in and say, okay, where are our injuries, severe injuries and fatalities, traffic fatalities happening in the country? I'm sorry, in the city. And you can chart that out. And then of course you can overlay on top of that a school map. So you can really see where are our problems, how do they overlay with their schools, where kids are walking or biking or could be walking and biking. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see, again, a similar information as here. So data is really powerful. This is one of the first things you want to do is understand what's happening where. And on this next slide, I'll show, what data also helps elevate for all of us. And we're seeing this more and more is that, not all of our communities or neighborhoods have been built equitably or treated even equitably. And what we see here, and thanks, these are numbers from the Safe Routes Partnership from a few years ago. These are national statistics showing that we see that there's trends. Low-income people are twice as likely to be killed while walking. African American and Latino people in America are twice as likely to be killed while walking. We see that, not surprisingly, low-income communities are less likely to have sidewalks. So what we see, and again, city after city, is that certain communities have been, frankly, disinvested in or underinvested in when it comes to good design, good infrastructure. So good sidewalks, wide sidewalks, enough crossing time, good bikeways, good traffic or transit stops. What we need to do, so back to this data, what we can really see when we dig into this data is, hey, there's certain communities probably in your city that deserve more energy and more resources because they've really been underinvested in. And I think that's an important part of all of our work, is helping with the equity of safe mobility. So I'm going to move on here to back to this systems approach and talk a little bit about some examples. This is a common approach, this spectrum of prevention that's used for public health issues. And again, I really want to emphasize that traffic safety, the safety of our kids walking and biking to school, and our communities getting around their communities, walking and biking, taking transit and driving, it really is a public health issue, because nationally we know that there are 40,000 preventable traffic deaths a year in the US. That's about 100 a day, more than 100 a day. And we really want to think about, how do we stop those? How do we prevent those? And that's really thinking about not just these bottom rungs. You see on the bottom, individual knowledge, community education. So again, this is really important to say, hey, it's back to school time, which, it is right now. So happy back to school, everybody. It's back to school time. We want to remind everybody, drive extra safe around the schools, and et cetera, schools in session. So sure, we want you to do that. That's a good idea. Put up the billboards, put up the radio PSAs, but that is only going to get us so far, right? We know that changing individual behavior just via those kind of softer education campaigns is not going to be enough. We need to be looking at the higher levels, or the upper levels here of the spectrum of prevention, which is really influencing policy and organizational practices. And we'll talk about some examples here now. That really is, you all as community members and leaders and folks really activated in the community for healthy, active transportation. It really is about focusing on roadway design and managing speed, because people are not going to walk and bike to school or anywhere if they don't feel safe and comfortable. So this is a before and after image, before on the left, of a New York City street, one of the early ones they did through their Vision Zero work. But what you can see here is that dedicated, physically separated bikeway on the right side, which makes such a difference. And one lane, fewer car traffic. So for the people walking, crossing as pedestrians, it's much safer. Here's an image I just want to share from my hometown. I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, where it's very spread out. Not a lot of kids walk to school, frankly, yet these 4 or 5 kids are walking to school. This is in my neighborhood, and these kids are doing the right thing. They're walking to school. It's only about 3 blocks away to this elementary school, but they don't have sidewalks. They're walking in the street because they do not have a good choice of sidewalks. So this is an example where we know we cannot educate our way out of this problem, right? It's not just about educating the kids about using a sidewalk because they don't have that choice. So getting back to that issue of really making sure we invest in the built environment that people of all ages and all modes have safe, comfortable choices. Part of that is really making sure that our work, I'd say in the Safe Routes programs, the Complete Streets programs, all the work that we're doing around the country really understands that we need to be choosing safety over speed. This is one of the most important areas, and I'd say one of the least developed areas and maybe undervalued areas. So this image is showing a slide that if I could only show one slide ever about Vision Zero, it would be this one. Really emphasizing that if someone's driving at 20 miles per hour and hits the average pedestrian, and when I say average, that's tough to say, but let's say a fully grown, able-bodied person, they have a 90% chance of survival on average being hit by a car at 20 miles per hour. But that flips dramatically when that car is moving at 40 miles per hour. And 40 miles probably doesn't sound that fast to us, right? So all of a sudden their chances are 91 out of 10 of death. I'm sorry, of surviving, and 9 out of 10 of death. So this is even more extreme for people who may be frail, senior citizens, or children, right? Smaller kids, and their bodies are not as developed yet. So we're really looking at this as this is a telltale number, where we are going to have people interacting and mixing between walking, biking, driving. We need to be setting our speeds and enforcing our speeds and designing our streets for these lower speeds. I would say the 20 to 25 mile per hour, sometimes even 15, especially around school zones. And we're seeing this more and more. I want to give credit to places like Portland, Boston, Seattle, New York City, DC, which are all lowering their speed limits on neighborhood streets, around school zones. Again, sometimes to 20, sometimes down to 15 miles per hour. They're lowering their speed limits, but they're also adding physical traffic calming measures like traffic circles and more street designs, trees in the street, etc., more landscaping that physically slows drivers down in addition to a lower speed limit. And we know that's the most important thing we can do is really slow people down. And I'm going to wind down. I know Nancy's going to share some more here, but I just want to end with our contact information at the Vision Zero Network. We have a lot more information about Vision Zero, but to really emphasize, just as in the work you're doing with Safe Routes, this is really, in a way, zero sounds, sad and dark, and obviously, a difficult number because we are thinking about deaths and injuries, but really what we're doing in this movement and what you all are doing is talking about more. It's about more birthdays and more celebrations and more time with family and loved ones. So it really is about this movement to make sure that safe mobility is afforded to everyone out there, no matter what age or background, so that they can get around safely and healthy. So thanks so much, and I will pass it back to you, Nancy.
Great. Thank you so much, Leah. Going to wait for one moment to be able to show you my slides before I jump into things. Great. So now I want to tie together some of the opportunities and big picture issues that Leah talked about that are happening in all of our communities, and that each of us have an opportunity to be part of the solution towards. And I have several ideas that I want to share with you. And some of it is going to circle around this idea of harnessing the power of Walk to School Day. We know that communities get really inspired by having the chance to walk with their kids, and that really can help motivate to more things. But of course, first, why are we thinking about these things? I think everyone on the phone probably agrees with the idea that children need and deserve special protection. They don't have other options for how they get around in this world unless someone puts them in a car or puts them on a bus. Then particularly for young people, their options are limited. And communities tend to agree with the idea that it is valuable and important to help people live their lives to their fullest potential. And this idea that we don't want to just create places where people are surviving, but also where they're thriving and growing. And of course, part of that for everyone, and particularly for children, is that they need to be able to be active, that it's important for academic success and brain development, as well as being important for our bodies. So, of course, we've been talking in the recent minutes around preventing traffic crashes and preventing serious injuries and deaths, but it's also on this, which I think is sort of what Leah finished with, this quality of life piece too, and how do we help people live the lives they want to live with, which is something that communities care very much about when they think about creating great quality of life. And that is where Vision Zero for Youth comes in. And we know there's good evidence for this, that starting with a focus on children and keeping kids healthy can change the tone of a conversation. So that's why it's particularly helpful when communities are trying to do hard things like slow down traffic. So we just heard, thank you so much, Leah, for your really great explanation about the importance of slowing down traffic. And of course, parents understand this. They know this. When they fill out surveys about why they do or do not allow their child to walk to school, then speed and traffic volumes are high up there right after distance. And let me also be clear that we know how to slow down traffic. And in fact, we're going to be having a webinar all about it. And we're also going to hear from some communities about how they took action on making real change. But the political and public support for those changes can be hard to get. And that's where we think a focus on kids can help light the fire, giving people a chance to try something new, particularly traffic calming measures that improve safety, like roundabouts, or, Leah showed an example about a New York City street that reduced a traffic lane and added a separated bike lane instead. We think starting those kinds of efforts in school zones where it makes sense can really help grease the wheels towards acceptance, to make it easier to build those improvements in more places throughout a community. And really that whole kind of try it out option is a fundamental idea behind Walk to School Day as well, right? We give people a chance to try one day, committing to just one day to see what walking to school is like, and they discover, whoa, this is fun. And kids say, gosh, I want to be able to do this more. It's not as far as we thought. We want to be able to do it without requiring a special police escort, like maybe we did today. And that inspires and sort of jumpstarts communities to want to make more changes. In New York City, safety cameras were approved by the state for use near schools only, and that has expanded. So now they can be used up to a quarter mile from a school, and the city is able to use these really effective safety tools, safety cameras, in places that have more crashes that need to be prevented. So this started out as something that was a school-specific effort, and now is being able to grow to protect even more people. And so really, like, that is the mission behind the Vision Zero for Youth approach that all of you are invited to be part of. Very much rooted in Safe Routes to School. As many of you know, also as the National Center for Safe Routes to School, we served as the clearinghouse for the federal Safe Routes to School program, and boy, did we learn a lot about what communities care about, how they get things done, what kinds of countermeasures work best, and also, of course, the tremendous importance of collaboration across agencies and across groups and sectors. And the angle that Vision Zero for Youth adds on to that is really this idea of using walking and biking to school as a jumping off point to then help build support for improving safety in all places that kids might walk and bike, and then improving safety for really all community members. And that is another piece that I think sets Vision Zero for Youth apart a little bit from Safe Routes to School, is its laser focus specifically on safety, and that where there is a Vision Zero commitment within a city, that Vision Zero for Youth is within Vision Zero, that those things are nested together. And what do I mean by that? What can that look like? That looks like having child-focused strategies within a Vision Zero plan. That means understanding your crash data for children and youth. It's looking at your crashes vis-a-vis where your schools are and other kinds of neighborhoods, parks, other places where children and youth tend to go. And also, of course, this Vision Zero for Youth is rooted in Walk to School Day. Like I mentioned a minute ago, this opportunity to give communities a chance to kind of try out a new concept, a new idea that then can help them understand what some of the benefits can be. And of course, this same value for safety and bringing partners together. We have had the opportunity over the last few years to give our Vision Zero for Youth Leadership Award to 2 different cities. And I want to tell you very briefly about each of them because I think it helps paint the picture for what Vision Zero for Youth can look like. And the first place that we gave the award was the city of Los Angeles. Now, I will also tell you that the city of Los Angeles was one of the 2 cities that first celebrated Walk to School Day back in 1997. And they now have Vision Zero, and their Safe Routes to School program is very much at the core of their Vision Zero program. They see it as a central component of Vision Zero. They used a data-driven prioritization process to help them rank schools and which schools most needed their safety improvements. And they also have a very strong partnership with the school district. In fact, the LA Unified School District school board passed a resolution in support of Vision Zero, really, I think, demonstrating how the city and the school understand how these pieces impact youth. And then also really trying to think about how they can help slow down traffic around their schools. Last year, we gave the award to New York City. And of course, I already talked to you about their safety camera program, which of course, we think is just exemplary and hope that other cities are able to follow suit. They also have a very robust youth engagement and outreach strategies that they use, helping give youth the spotlight in how they would like to articulate what their needs are for moving around safely on their city streets. They also have a special focus on making infrastructure improvements around their schools. And they very much talk about the importance of their multi-agency collaboration. They have a Vision Zero task force that meets every 2 weeks, and they felt strongly that it was really that task force that deserved the credit for receiving this award. We have written full case studies about both of these cities, and as you can see, I included the URL here. And keep in mind, it's okay if you can't jot down some of the URLs that I'm including on my slides, because we will have all the slides available to you for you to download as well. So how do we bring that even closer into focus with Walk to School Day? And I want to offer up some ideas to you kind of specifically around that, some of which you may have already done and feel like old news. My job, my challenge is to hopefully have 1 or 2 things that sound appealing and useful that maybe you haven't tried. So first off, so important, and when Leah was talking about Vision Zero cities and which cities were identified as having a Vision Zero plan and committing to Vision Zero, then mayor and high-level buy-in is a key part of that. And that can start with having a mayor come to a Walk to School Day and asking them to talk about the importance of child and pedestrian safety as a community-wide issue and not just on the route to school. And last year, we learned from Walk to School organizers that about 1 in 5 events included a top elected official, like a mayor. We also have a mayor's statement that we encourage communities to use, and here you see a picture of Mayor Bowser, the Washington, D.C.'s mayor, signing the statement. That is one way that it can be used, but we know that other places have used it by lifting some of the language and including it in pamphlets or flyers. So it isn't reserved just for mayors. If you like what's in here, and you can think of other ways that you want it used in your community, but we very much see it as something that mayors can, and we hope will, commit to. We wrote it after interviewing mayors and city planners and asking them more about their visions for their communities, and then try to reflect back some of that language about what they care about for their community and how that relates back to safe walking and biking for youth. Third, it's seeking media attention, being sure that you're inviting media and that you have some talking points that link how a walk to school day is a jumping off point for road safety for everybody. And we have some sample talking points that are available for you to use and customize. Number 4, be sure and invite your local transportation officials. This is so valuable. I can't tell you, asking them to take a walk with you, either on your walk to school day or maybe beforehand when you're planning your route, or as part of your Safe Routes to School work, along with a few parents and students to talk about major safety concerns, and asking them very directly what their department does to protect kids. Number 5, we've talked a little bit about students. I want to touch more just on the fact that students are really important voices for change and what they think needs to happen. As far as a walk to school event goes, they might want to create messages that they display on the day of the event, but we also certainly know of communities that do more elaborate things where they conduct walk audits and then summarize the results and present them to city council, or it helps them refine exactly what youth think need to get done in order to kind of focus communities' priorities around that. We are featuring some youth leaders later in September on our 3rd webinar. Just another plug. You are not going to want to miss it. We're really excited about some of the dynamic young people out there kind of leading the way for their communities in talking about road safety. Number 6, asking questions. So circling back again to Vision Zero, finding out, is your community considering Vision Zero or already has a plan? And asking questions about, is children's safety being included in that plan? Does your Safe Routes to School program have a seat at the table? Because it should. As part of the work at the Highway Safety Research Center where we are located, we have some other researchers that looked at all the Vision Zero plans that had been published as of December of 2018. And the second most common kind of stakeholder was education. So they are recognized as being an important partner to have at the table. And so, the opportunity is there for us to really talk about what the benefits are to starting with a focus on children and in places where kids walk and bike. So I also invite you to take a look at our website that is just about the Vision Zero for Youth initiative. And of course, I also encourage you to take a look at the Vision Zero Network's site to get a better sense about what cities are doing around Vision Zero. Also want to give you a heads up about a few things that are going to be coming up. We're very excited that we're getting going on a demonstration project that we anticipate learning quite a lot from working with a city that is implementing Vision Zero for Youth, and we anticipate having some example plan language to come out of that, as well as some other more specific strategies that we can point to and example for other cities to follow. We also are doing our first open call for applications for our 3rd Vision Zero for Youth Leadership Award recipient city. And just to be clear, in order to receive this award, a city does not have to have like a formal Vision Zero for Youth plan, because we know that this is an initiative that is just starting to grow. And what we care about more broadly is that people are using this strategy of prioritizing children and youth not only because children deserve that special protection, but also as a way to help build the public support and the political will needed in order to really do all the tough work that Vision Zero requires. Also, just a reminder to register your Walk to School event. I know many of you on the phone aren't sure if your event has registered yet. You can see in the left sidebar there that there is a button you can push to see who's already signed up. And of course, we hope that you will sign up your event or be part of an event or consider organizing one. If you aren't currently, consider organizing one. And for all of you who are doing that work as part of Safe Routes to School programs, particular special thank you to you. So on that note, I want to toss it back to Kristen, which I'm going to go ahead and just do right now.
Yes, thanks, Nancy. Thank you, and thanks also to Leah, both of you, for sharing your presentations and the information about Vision Zero and Vision Zero for Youth and other programs that engage with youth. We do have time for a few questions, so participants, feel free to go ahead and submit your questions via the question box, and we'll get to as many as we can. The first question to kind of kick us off is kind of related to logistics, which is, do you have to register for Vision Zero for Youth like you have to register for Walk to School Day?
This is Nancy. I can jump in on that one. And no, you don't. You know, we have a kind of a formal registration process for Walk to School Day and Bike to School Day. If you go to the Vision Zero for Youth webpage, you'll see that we have a place for identifying mayors who want to join on, because we know that mayor leadership is so important. But no, you don't have to have any kind of formal stamp of approval or signification that you are using Vision Zero for Youth or Vision Zero for Youth strategies.
Okay, great, thank you. Also related to Vision Zero for Youth, does your city already have to be participating in doing Vision Zero to do Vision Zero for Youth?
Okay, good question. And the answer is no. I mean, we're really seeing this being used kind of in two ways. One, as part of Vision Zero efforts in places that have signed on to Vision Zero, but that for places that are not ready to make that commitment, or maybe will never feel ready to make that commitment, that if they can start at least by committing to reach zero traffic deaths and serious crashes among children and youth, that would be huge. So they can be separate.
Thanks for clarifying that, Nancy. Leah, during your presentation, you talked about changing language and shifting the language from calling crash scenarios accidents to calling them crashes. Do you have any tips or strategies or examples of how to start kind of having these conversations in your community and shifting the language? How would communities start to do that and influence that shift from accident to crash?
Yeah, great question. You know, oftentimes events, something like a walk to school event or some sort of event, might be a chance even to internally influence. And when I say internally, maybe it's the Safe Routes to School team, you know, folks from the school, from the city, from the transportation department that are planning events and working on it. Even because, you know, I know it's a lot to think, oh, we want to change everyone's language and thinking about this in the whole world. Well, let's start with where we frankly have the most influence and where we're connected most, which is your organizing team, right? So maybe that's one idea to say, hey, and obviously we don't want to dwell on the unsafe part, but we want to talk about, you know, making sure that everyone has healthy, safe, comfortable options for walking and biking and getting to school, et cetera. And it could be an internal maybe talking point or recommendation this year. Again, doesn't need to be a big public facing thing, but with your team to say, hey, and when we talk about improving safety, obviously that means preventing crashes and and talk about the language of preventing crashes versus preventing accidents. So that could be a great way through an event, but also people do it through, political leaders, maybe asking the mayor, other city council members, the head of the transportation department or police department or school district, really thinking about who your influencers are and if they can make a commitment. That's a really important kind of public commitment, because then they're getting quoted in the media and they're speaking at public meetings, and they can be out there and really be your champions for talking about, really what we're talking about here is kind of taking back our streets for safe, healthy mobility for everyone. Thanks.
Thanks, Leah. Those are really good ideas for places to start, and yeah, those are good strategies. Thank you for sharing those tips. Another question, and this is about youth programs. So how are youth programs, for instance, Safe Routes to School, how are they getting involved in Vision Zero efforts specifically?
Yeah, this is Leah. I have some ideas, and I'm sure Nancy has some as well, but I'll just share that it's, we're definitely seeing, as you guys mentioned, Nancy mentioned with the LA example, we're definitely seeing a lot of communities where oftentimes they already have a Safe Routes program that might have been running for the last couple years, maybe 5 or 10 years even. And then they're interested in getting involved with Vision Zero. So again, we don't want to recreate the wheel. We don't want to bump anyone's efforts. This is really about synergy and leveraging good work already being done. So what we see in a lot of places is, as Vision Zero comes to play in the city, what it really does is, what it can do, if done well, I should say, is build out more interest publicly and politically in the work you're already doing around Safe Routes, right? So part of this is saying, hey, how do we bring more attention and urgency and, frankly, resources? Is that budget money in the city budget process? Is it media attention? Is it political attention? Vision Zero can really be, I'd say, a tool or a strategy for you all to bring more attention to the work you're already doing about Safe Routes. So, often what we're not seeing people kind of go out and say, oh, we have to go start a new program because Safe Routes isn't working. That's not it at all. It's really about how do we leverage even more of the good work happening at Safe Routes programs and bring more attention and urgency and political will there. So I think it's really important all these pieces fit together and help each other and leverage each other.
Yeah. So, boy, Leah, trying to think of something to add to that. That was such a great response. The only other thing I can think of is that in some places there are now less resources for Safe Routes to School than there used to be. And by showing how Safe Routes to School is part of a broader effort, and in some places an effort that's getting a lot of attention right now, then it can also serve to give Safe Routes to School more longevity. But I definitely see that going both ways, right? Just like Leah was saying, and I think something that I spent quite a bit of time trying to hopefully bring across during my presentation is just the fact that these pieces, do fit together, and that when we prioritize kids, we really can help improve safety for everybody.
Thanks to you both. And Nancy, you touched on something related to resources in your answer, which is related to another question that has come up, which is related to funding as a resource. So do communities need funding to work on Vision Zero and Vision Zero for Youth? How can they kind of incorporate these activities, and is funding necessary for some of these efforts?
Yeah, okay. Well, this is Nancy. I'll go first. I would say in the building support phase that piece doesn't necessarily require funding, but when we're talking about making changes to our roadway environment to improve safety, to make space for people who are walking and biking, that does require a commitment in terms of making changes to budgets to allow for that.
And I'll just add, I think it's important too, that to think, we we don't want people to think, oh gosh, we've got to go out and find brand new money to prioritize safety. Obviously more funds will help and you do want to get there, but I think it's really important to think you could, start where you're at. And by that, it really means, every community has some budget, probably not as much as they deserve or want, but they've got some budget out there for transportation related issues, for safety related issues. How do you really grow that? And how do you help it be more data driven and more effective in the locations that it needs to be in? So it's really taking what the city or community already has and using it better. Now, then you certainly want to be growing that and growing the portion of funding and resources going to safety, but it is important to not wait for brand new money to appear, because that can be quite a while. It's really about prioritizing what you've got too.
Thank you. Kind of related to prioritization, another question related to this is thinking about how safe routes programs and schools and communities, how they already exist. What are some initial steps that a community could do to introduce the Vision Zero ideas to the community, kind of using those two vehicles together?
This is Leah again. Events are great chances. I know Nancy talked obviously a lot about Walk to School Day and thinking about how to piggyback and leverage the attention and excitement around events. But there's also important things to do. Obviously, back to school time is a time everyone's thinking about, particularly probably heavily about safety and such. But really trying to help show examples, I would say, of communities that are making a change, where they're seeing walking and biking numbers increase, where they're seeing safety increase, where they're seeing interest in healthy active mobility increase. You can really kind of we can all borrow some of those ideas via the Vision Zero for Youth Network and our own work, see what's working and bring it to your kind of internal champions and try and get, even if they're just pilots, started to say, hey, here's a really cool idea that worked in, I don't know, Macon, Georgia. And what if we tried this for one school year and see how it goes? And really think about what are different programs or projects that you could at least get tried that are really clearly safety oriented that you don't have going yet.
Yeah, and I think the only other thing I would add to what Leah said is that to shine a light back on your community's values. To say, hey, we say that we're a place that cares about fill in the blank. And so, and then tying safe routes to school, Vision Zero, and the importance of road safety back to the language that a community uses to identify what it is they take pride in.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'll just add to that if I can really quickly. I think that's what you just said, Nancy, makes me think a little bit about, how important it is, or what a great opportunity it is, I should say, that part of what I'd say the Vision Zero movement's helping to do is help kind of break down silos that often exist. And they shouldn't exist. We don't mean for them to exist, but they just do. People get busy and everybody's kind of in their own lane, right? Which can be a good thing sometimes, but sometimes we want more collaboration and cooperation and support from a broad kind of world of people. And I think Vision Zero is an example where to say, okay, somebody who maybe does not have a child in the school district, doesn't think about school area safety personally, directly, but obviously they care about safety. They don't want people in their community being hurt. They want people to be healthy. So Vision Zero can really expand that and say, hey, this isn't just for school families or just for school folks. This is for our entire community. And I think as much as you can think about, again, kind of broadening that scope so that we're building out more support for the thing we all agree, which is safe transportation for everyone, no matter what their age or mode of getting around. We all probably agree on that. So hopefully it's bringing more people into your efforts and caring about your work in your Safe Routes programs.
Yeah. Okay. So now I want to add to what you just said, Leah, if that's okay, because it reminds me about, you know, I was talking a little bit ago about this idea of like helping children and adults live, you know, their lives to their fullest potential. And so there was some research done funded by CDC, and it was around framing health messages. And so they conducted a lot of focus groups to get feedback from communities about what kinds of language and framing seems to have a lot of common ground. And the whole idea of helping children and people of all ages live lives to their fullest potential is one of those things that tends to be something that communities can agree on. So I completely agree. This idea of trying to identify like what is the, you know, the common thread that brings people together, and building off of that is just so valuable.
Well, thank you both for taking the time to answer these really good questions. And unfortunately, that's all the time we have for discussion. And I apologize to the participants if we did not get a chance to answer your question. But thank you again to Leah and Nancy, our panelists, and thank you to all the participants for attending today's webinar. I hope you all have a great day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.